Join Boise State Public Radio for a concert with blues rock guitarist and vocalist Coco Montoya at the Treefort Music Hall in Boise, February 13th, with reserved seating. A night with Coco Montoya and his band. Find details and a link for tickets at boisestatepublicradio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. You're listening to Idaho Matters. So maybe you got one for Christmas, a yearly subscription for a magazine or a different snack box each month. There are all kinds of subscriptions now, from fitness to food and beauty, even a new wine box every month. Now, a lot of these subscriptions come with great reviews and endorsements from social media influencers. They're fun, they're easy to sign up for, but there can be a bit of a darker side to monthly subscriptions, and we're not just talking about the financial cost of it. So when Boise State came out with an article on the impact of subscription-based business, we got in touch with economics professor Simia Islam and psychology professor Dr. Mary Pritchard to tell us more about this business model. And they're both joining us today. I want to welcome you to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Simia, let me start with you. It's so nice to have both of you. Simia, let me start with you. You've said subscription-based services have been around since the 17th century. So why are they so common today?
Part of that has to do with the Internet of Things that we live with these days, and also the advances in technology that we've seen, e-commerce primarily. So these things make the process quite inexpensive now for the vendors to offer and for consumers to make the easy choice of signing on.
So on the surface, what's the advantage to a subscription to both a consumer and to a business?
On the consumer side, perhaps this gives a feeling of belonging to a community. The surprise factor plays a big role in it too. Every month, if a box arrives and you don't exactly know what's in it, it's kind of a gift to yourself. And as we live more and more in an isolated sort of a social world, I feel that maybe that's one of the reasons why people prefer that. And the convenience is not a small factor either. Some of the things that you can kind of not spend time thinking about if you have signed on for a service. On the vendor side, this is about recurring revenue. So it's kind of having automatic customers, and that allows them to not have to think about onboarding new customers, etc. So the process becomes a lot more automatic, and as a result, revenue becomes sort of automatic as well.
So Mary, talk to us about social media and how that has influenced these subscription services.
Social media is, we all know, is such a powerful influence in our lives in many, many areas. And the subscription services are no different. So it's very easy to go find your favorite influencer on Instagram or TikTok or wherever you might be. And they often will advertise their subscription services that they're using. Now, they're probably being paid for such advertisements, although you may not know that. And so it's a way that you can buy into the folks that you admire and look up to and feel like you can be like them a little bit in using the same products that they are promoting. And so it's a really quick and easy way for us to have that sense of belongingness with individuals that we look up to.
So Mary, it almost seems like there's a psychological effect kind of happening when people are buying into a subscription, in particular, maybe if, as you said, there's maybe this social media star, right? That's encouraging you to do this.
Exactly. Right. And so it's a sense of bonding with this person that you've never met, a sense that you might be able to, depending on the product, if it's something like a supplement or a weight loss or a diet or exercise plan, that you might be able to look like them, right? It's the person that you are looking up to. And so we buy into that, and it makes us feel really good about ourselves because we think that we're going to be able to achieve the results that they've achieved by using the same products.
And Samia, you say that this kind of connection between yourself and maybe this influencer really is a draw for folks. And this maybe goes back to that psychological impact because we are seeming to be more and more isolated as we spend more and more time on our devices instead of in person.
That's right. So, like Mary said, it has a lot to do with the psychological factors that you mentioned and Mary mentioned. So, in behavioral economics, there's lots of studies where we also reinforce the findings from psychology literature, where we do see that people are influenced by the choices that people that they respect or value the opinion of, they're swayed by the actions or the choices of those people. So if somebody is following an influencer and that influencer is promoting a product or saying that that particular product has helped them, it's much easier now to find customers out there in the world that are going to trust that judgment and feel that they also need to use that product in order to benefit in the same way that that person they respect has. So yeah, I mean, this is studied. It's studied, and it has been established that this is how decision making is flawed. Human decision making is flawed for some reasons, and one of which is this: is because we're swayed by what other people do, especially those people that we respect or value the opinion of.
So, Mary, I'm curious about in these studies and this research, if there is any type of generational basis for this. And what I mean by that is, and maybe it's just because I'm old and crotchety and I don't trust anybody when they tell me it's a good product. So for me, when I see a social media influencer telling me I should do something, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. With that said, my 13-year-old, I mean, every single time there's a YouTuber or a TikToker that says he should try something, he wants to go, either buy it or try it. And it's like talking somebody off a ledge. So I'm just curious how generation potentially plays into this.
So it's a kind of a yes and no answer, Gemma. So the underlying theory that we're talking about is called social comparison theory. And that's a natural, innate human tendency for us to learn more about ourselves by comparing ourselves to other people. And to the extent that we like and respect them and want to be like them, that's called upward social comparison. And that's where these products come in. I think the generational difference in terms of who is more attracted to subscribing to something that they've seen on social media comes in just to the fact that Gen Z, the alpha generation, to some extent Gen Y, grew up with social media. Gen X, the boomers, the great generation, did not. And so for us, it's a little bit newer. And we tend to be a little bit maybe more suspicious of things that haven't always been around. Whereas your son has always most likely known social media, been involved in that world. And so it's just natural that he would go and look to people he admires online to find out what he might want to do and who he might want to be like, and then buy into that.
Right. And then I tell him now, it's like, I'm like, give me a reason why you need this. And then he comes to me and says, it's not a scam. And I'm like, So with that said, you two have come up with some advice for folks who are really trapped in this, what you call subscription maze. So can we start with that and maybe just asking yourself, do I need this product? So how does someone know if, I guess, they need this certain, monthly subscription?
So from my perspective, the way that we can guard against being swayed too much or influenced too much by what's the fad right now, what are people doing and trying to copy, or the FOMO of it, fear of missing out. To avoid that, we have to pay more attention to how much we are spending. So our expenses, one area where also behaviorally confines that human beings are not very good at. So keeping track of that, because these subscription services, they add up. For example,
Mhm.
if we say that we are going to cut our cable connection because there are so many streaming services now available, but with time, this kind of got out of hand where we are now having to navigate multiple streaming services to get the media content that we want. But the prices are not static. They're also rising over the years. And because this is an automatic payment, it is very difficult to keep track of how much we are actually spending. So we have to be vigilant on how much this is costing us and to be able to keep on top of that. So a lot of the times we also have other things going on in life. So there might not be a whole lot of bandwidth to pay attention. And this exactly the motivation behind subscription models is this particular weakness that we have in being able to pay attention. So what the inattention of naive consumers, essentially, that's how we talk about that in the literature. So not to be a naive consumer, for example. So that would be one of the ways that we need to stay on top of what this is exactly costing us.
I would
So,
add
Mary,
to
let's
that.
go. Yeah, I was going to say, can you add to at least this idea of the cancellation part of it? Because I will say that is one of the biggest reasons why I refuse to do any type of subscription is because you have to remember to cancel it. And I'm like, oh, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that.
That's right. Yes. Um, I think, Mary, you had a comment on this or similar?
I was going to go back to our previous question, but Simia, go ahead and add the cancellation.
Okay, so cancellation is difficult to do, and I will also say that the vendors don't make it very easy either, and that's also for a reason, as we can all understand. So keeping track of those deadlines is very, very difficult, and this is one of the areas I feel, Gemma, that the Generation Y and Gen Z are different from Gen X and previous, where Gen X and previous, we are like you, more cautious about signing up for something because we know that eventually, maybe one day, we will need to cancel. But I'm not sure that because of having grown up in a subscription-based type of system, the generations Y and Z are probably not looking at it in the same way because they are much more used to this system. And this is where I want to mention this evolution of capitalism that is happening right now as we get to be more platform oriented. And this has been written about lately about techno-feudalism is what they're saying. So essentially, the word seems scary, but the idea is that this rent that these companies are able to get, which isn't really a final payment on anything, but it carries on into the future for what seems like it could be forever. So this is the kind of system that can get very exploitative in that way.
And Mary, you wanted to add something more to the previous question.
I was just going to remind folks that we think about these as needs, but actually for the most part, it's a want. And so I think just taking a step back before you hit the subscribe button and asking, is this truly something that I need, or is this something that I just want? When we're talking about fundamental human needs, rarely are those going to be satisfied by something that we get through a quick click of a button online. And so what is it that we actually really are craving in that moment? It's probably not a subscription to whatever we're about to hit subscribe to. So just taking a step back to check in with ourselves. Is this a want or is this a need?
Before I let you go, Mary, what would you say after all of this research you've done into this is your maybe biggest concern when it comes to these subscription-based models?
I think actually it's more of the addictive nature of it. We are addicted to many things in our society these days. Social media is one of those things that for many folks has turned into an unhealthy habit and bordering on addiction. And I think subscriptions can be that way as well. It's instant gratification for us, but it's also a very emotionally based financial decision that we are making, and those often are not in our best interest.
I want to thank both of you so much. This was such a fascinating conversation. We've been speaking with Boise State economics professor Samia Islam and psychology professor Dr. Mary Pritchard. We've been discussing their research into subscription services. We will, of course, put a link to the Boise State story on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudet.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.